6 pounds. So.
Is that right?
Oh, okay. Here we go. Let's have the conversation.
Okay.
Oh, what's giving you? Anything?
Oh, wonderful.
You're a doer, it's hard.
And where is this going in an internal or external?
Do this.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. We have.
Boys,
This is how I'm gonna be commissioner to the office.
Cool. You have a really nice gift. Good to see you.
Yeah, so
Who's up? That was my, I also did the same, a little bit different at Tufts, basically. That would be fantastic.
I like how you're encouraging about going to the law.
Well,
Sometimes
it's mixed, but if it's your passion, you should call it passion.
How is it possible for a young white prison warder and his prisoner who was serving a life sentence not to become bitter enemies? Surely they should have hated each other. This is a remarkable story of two South African men, one black, one white, one Afrikaans. How was it possible that this prisoner one day would become the most celebrated and famous world leader of all time, would value his friendship with his ex-warder so highly, and even write this letter to his warder son on his 16th birthday? Dear Rian, I am told that you are now 16 years old. Congratulations. If you work hard, you are likely to rise and become one of the most important leaders of our country. Always remember that. Sincerely, Uncle Nelson. Rolihlahla Mandela was born into the Mandela tribe on 18 July 1918 in the small Eastern Cape village of Mvezo. At the age of 7, he and his parents moved to the village of Kuno. Here, he spent the happiest days of his life. He would sometimes look after flocks of sheep and would go home to his family's humble house after playing till dusk to eat supper and listen to his mother's stories around the fireside. Kuno is the village where Mandela's mom and dad are both buried, in the Mandela family cemetery. From the age of 7, he attended a local Methodist primary school in Kuno, where his teacher, Ms. Mtingani, gave him the Christian name Nelson. All that remains of the original school are the foundation stones and some wooden poles showing where the small classroom once was. This is where he lived with his parents during his early years. Decades later, on his release from jail, he rebuilt his mom's house. According to the Christian traditions and values, Mandela was baptized in the African Native Church in the rural area outside Kuno. The remains of the stones of the church are still visible today. In 1930, when Mandela was 12 years old, his father passed away and the young Rolihlahla became a ward of the king of the Tembu people, Jongintaba Dalinyebo, at the great place in Qekezweni. This is the Randavul where he and his cousin Justice lived. Here, Mandela used to listen to the tribal elders discussing and debating the issues of the day. He was too young to join in, so he listened from behind a nearby kraal. He completed his junior certificate at Clarkberry Boarding Institute and went on to Hild Town, a Wesleyan secondary school of some repute, where he matriculated. In 1941, rather than have arranged marriages, as was the king's threat, Mandela and Justice decided to run away to Johannesburg, boarding a train at the nearby station of Beach. First place Mandela stayed at in Johannesburg was a room he rented in a house in Alexandra. In 1944, he married Walter Sisulu's cousin, Evelyn Mace, a nurse. They had 2 sons and 2 daughters, the first of whom died in infancy. In 1946, Mandela and Evelyn moved into their home in Vilakazi Street in Soweto. They divorced in 1957, and from 1958, Mandela lived here with his second wife, Nomzamo Winifred Matigizela, Winnie. Mandela was to spend very little time here as his role in the struggle activities became all-consuming and he was forced underground in 1961. Mandela returned here for a brief 11 days in 1990 after his release. During this time, Mandela completed a 2-year diploma in law on top of his BA, and in August 1952, he and Oliver Tambo established South Africa's first black law firm, Mandela and Tambo, on the site of the present Chancellor's House. There is perhaps no other site of incarceration in South Africa that imprisoned the sheer number of well-renowned men and women as those held within the walls of the Old Fort, the Women's Jail, and Number 4. Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, Paul Slovo, Albertina Sisulu, Winnie Madikizela Mandela, Fatima Mina. They all served time here. But the precinct also confined tens of thousands of ordinary people during its 100-year history. Men and women of all races, creeds, ages, and political agendas, the indigenous and the immigrant, the everyman and the elite. Basically, the history of every South African lives here. Nelson Mandela was also twice imprisoned within the fort's walls, first in 1956, then again in 1962, after being arrested outside Howick in KwaZulu-Natal. Constitution Hill is now a living museum that tells the story of South Africa's journey to democracy, and today is the home to the country's constitutional court, which endorses the rights of all citizens. Lily's Leaf Farm in Rivonia was a secret hideout used by ANC and Communist Party activists. Mandela himself spent time there in 1961 while he was underground. On 11 January 1962, using the adopted name David Motsamai, Mandela had secretly left South Africa. On 5th August 1963, he was arrested in a police roadblock outside Howick while returning home from KwaZulu-Natal. The rest of his comrades were arrested at Lily's Leaf Farm. On June 1964, Mandela and the 7 other Rivonia accused Sisulu, Kakrata, Mbeki, Mhlaba, Goldberg, Motswana, and Mlangeni were convicted and the next day were sentenced to life imprisonment. Goldberg was sent to Pretoria prison because he was white, while the others were sent to Robben Island on the 13th of June. Christo spent his early years with his parents on a small farm outside Stanford called Goedvertrouw, a Dutch word meaning good trust. Life was tough. The family had no luxuries, no electricity. Evenings were spent listening to Christo's dad playing the violin. From the age of 5, he went to a small school on a nearby farm. The nearest bus stop was 5 miles from his house. One of the farm workers, a black man called Chocolate, would walk with Christo to the bus stop. His schoolmates were all white boys. The colored and black kids went to another school. But before and after school, these were his friends. They spent their weekends and free time playing together. At the age of 12, his father developed pneumonia, and the family were forced to leave the farm and move to his uncle's house in Parow Valley. While at school, Christo started working on the weekends for a break. By the age of 17, he had saved enough money to buy an old Ford Cortina, which needed its engine overhauled and gearbox replaced. Rather than join the army for national service, as was compulsory for every white male, Christo decided to join the prison service. After training for a year in Kroonstad, he applied for a post on Robben Island because he wanted to be close to home. His application was successful, and in 1978, at the age of 19, he was sent to work on the island. That was when Christo first met Nelson Mandela, who at the time was 60 years old and serving a life sentence. Brand Mandela in contrasting worlds came to know in different ways the full cruelty of the apartheid laws, and those worlds collided when they found themselves on Robben Island, the bleak maximum security prison where Mandela was serving life and Brand was his water.
Hello? Can you hear me?
What?
I shouldn't ask you. Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome here to Alamo College's district. My name is Alejandra Bueno, and I serve as the Chief Program Officer for Global Engagement and Learning. On behalf of our institution, it is my distinct honor to welcome you all to this very special event, From Apartheid to Healing, a conversation with Christo Brand. At Alamo Colleges, we take pride in fostering meaningful conversations that bridge global and local perspectives, and today's event embodies that commitment. As we reflect on the legacy of Nelson Mandela, we have the unique opportunity to hear from someone who stood beside him during some of the most transformative moments in his history, Mr. Christo Brand. His history of reconciliation, resilience, and humanity is one that truly inspires us to find unity in our differences and hope in our shared future. I also want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the World Affairs Council of San Antonio, Dream Week, and our many partners who have come together to make this program possible. It is partnerships like this one that enrich our community and allow us to engage in such impactful conversations. Now, it is my great pleasure, my colleague and friend Armen Babajanian, CEO of the World Affairs Council. Armen is a visionary leader whose work has brought global conversations to the forefront of our community. Please join me in welcoming Armen to the stage to share more about the purpose of today's event. Welcome.
So much, Alejandra. Thank you so much. Appreciate you and Alamo College's support. We use the venue often because, well, honestly, we're a nonprofit. It's free, so we use that. But it's also very convenient. They're great partners to have. Please talk to Alejandra and her team. Jessica Barnes is working in the background, so thank you, Jessica and Gabby, who have been gracious hosts to us. So I want to thank you all for being here and for making time on a Saturday to hear some really cool stuff, some stories that I think you will find rewarding. It is very fitting and timely to have this program, this special Dream Week event, because I don't know how many of you were on the East Side marching last week. The largest Martin Luther King march in the world is right here in San Antonio. Yes. So hopefully, Mr. Brand, we can get you here next year for that and join 100,000 people. So it's very fitting to have this program. And I said Dream Week event. My brother, who's going to Shokari Nakpode, who's going to come and he'll talk more about it. We're wonderful partners, and we love being part of that series of events. It's so wonderful to think how, even though Mr. Mandela is not with us, that he's able right here today to bring us all together in this room, and to bring all of us to remember and to build upon his vision and his call for equality and justice, even though he's not present. So how powerful is that? Through him and through Mr. Brand, through my friend, my good friend Amir. So first, I want to thank Nick First Bank and Rosantina Aranda for their support. Of course, Alamo College's Students of Service, who is run by Amir. He's the CEO and also founder of SOS. And he'll talk a little bit more about that. And they also have a table out there, so please be sure to visit that table. Our guest, my good friend and fellow Rotarian Reggie Williams, is here, who you'll hear more about. And Commissioner Tommy Calver, who is right here, who's been so gracious with his time and supportive of the World Affairs Council. And he's sometimes a guest and sometimes the moderator, so he'll be moderating today. So thank you for that. Mr. Christo Brand, thank you. You've become a good friend and appreciate you for kind of taking a little trek from Tennessee to, before you go to South Africa, you come to Texas and go back, and your lovely wife, Estelle. So thank you both for being here in San Antonio, Texas. A few more thank yous before I turn it over, because I know you want to get to the crux of the event, which is the discussion. I want to thank Ambassador Prado, who's here. If you could just raise your hand or stand up or not do anything, but Ambassador Prado's here. Viscount Dunrussell, Andrew Morrison, our honorary British consul, is here, and if you can't miss him because he's one of the tallest guys in the room. Janet and Sam Scott, who are former Foreign Service officers. Great timing, sir. Hugo Lizarraga, our incoming board chair as of next week. He's going to be our new board chair from HEB. So thank you, Hugo. We have many people from the Rotary Club of San Antonio and Rotaract, the president of Rotaract, which is the student version or the university version of Rotary from Trinity. They just had a meeting with Mr. Brand upstairs, some of the students. And if you want to learn about how to promote positive peace in the world, there's so much more to talk about that. It's called the Seeds of Hope Initiative. And they're Jack McGuire, if you could raise your hand, JC Clapsaddle. Talk to them about some really cool initiatives that are taking place in Ireland. And they're the experts at this, and a great initiative that I think they're going to get Mr. Brand involved. So to say about that. Are the Amy's here? Dr. Amy, Peggy Amy, and we also have some of our friends from the Cameroonian community. I want to introduce three people in that order, and that way I don't have to keep getting up. But the first person who's going to come up is Shokari Nakpodia. He is the founder and director of something called Dream Week. The only thing I could say, I'm not going to belabor it. He's not only a gracious and kind guy, he's quite a visionary, and he does not know the meaning of the word impossible. He has taken something that is with a few events to thousands of programs having to do with MLK's vision, and he'll tell you more about that. After that, Amir Samandi is going to come up. Amir is a good friend, and none of you would be here today if it wasn't for him, because he helped us have formed this friendship with Mr. Brand, and he's going to talk a little bit about that and also about students of service. So I'm going to get out of your way. Oh, one more thing. These books, are they still available for sale outside? This is Mr. Brando's book called Doing Life with Mandela, My Prisoner, My Friend. And they're also signed. So please go out there, and there's a young gentleman there who can help you out. Thank you all for being here. We're going to have Q&A. This is going to go till about 4 o'clock, and then we'll open it up for some questions. And we're hoping to get you out of here by 4:30. If you go out to the restroom, you housekeeping, straight this way and then to the right, both restrooms are there. And then right outside, we also have some treats coming from MidFirst Bank. We appreciate them. And we just ask you if you can use the back door as you're going and coming, so not to disrupt the program. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to my good friend, Shokari Nakpodia with Dream Week.
My name is Shokari Nakpodia, and I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. I've been in San Antonio for over 20, my daughter's age, 22 years. So San Antonio is home to me now, and I found it a very European city. I lived in England for quite a while as well, and lived in New York. And when I arrived here, it just seemed like everywhere else had been settled and completed, and San Antonio had that open, welcoming spirit, and so I basically plugged myself into it. My name actually means it's complete, Shokari. That's actually, so you can say it in when you're satisfied or when you're kind of not. And so Dream Week started out because I went to the march, the MLK march. I was completely inspired. It was incredible to see 100,000 people just marching in one accord in this random San Antonio event. I was really surprised. And I thought, what would it be like to have, to reach out to people who had their minds in the right, hearts in the right place, but didn't have, maybe they were a little too cold with that, on a January morning on a Monday, to go out. And that's how Dream Week started. And nobody said no. So there's something in the DNA here. It's nothing to do with my genius. It's something exceptional. The genius of the community of San Antonio that produces produces the largest march in the world, and now the largest community curative march in the nation as well. And so round of applause for the city of San Antonio. This year, and so it's marked into a lot of, we have 220 events in a 17-day period. So if I look like I just rolled out of bed, please understand that you're running around all day. And I have a couple more to go. But this is our last weekend. So we've had almost 200 events. And it ranges from galas, fashion shows, serious conversation, debates, really incredible occasions like this. And I have the commissioner here who's a champion of Dream Week as well. And Amar, the agency behind Dream Week is called Dream Voice. So we're reaching out to the community and see where we can find the new Mandelas of this world, the new MLKs of this world. And they're not going to introduce themselves. We have to create an environment where that sort of genius, prior to conflict, rather than wait for a young girl shot in the face in Malala, for example. She has some exceptional qualities before that injury. How do we reach out to these individuals? How do we create an environment where they can blossom? 12-year-old child on the south side of town could actually change the entire world because of the ideas that they could bring about. And so our theme for this year is We Are Neighbor. And that's why I was so fascinated by having Mr. Christo present here, because every act towards another person is a neighboring act. And besides the systems and the labels, ultimately it's the interactions of individuals to each other that creates whatever it is that we call the world. So it's fascinating, and we have a saying in Nigeria that I'll say in Pidgin English, I'll translate it, but Pikin when no want a mama to sleep, instead no go sleep. Which basically means that a child that doesn't want his mother to sleep will not find sleep. That's all, right? So whatever it is that you are doing to somebody, good or bad, you're already present in that spirit as well. You have to be there. And so that neighboring act is very, very important. And that's why I think that no matter what our politics are, ultimately, we don't know what politics. I assume that it's skewed in one way or the other in this room, I can tell. But still, we are together. And we don't carry this on our foreheads, and we have to interact with each other. And the more good we put out personally, and the more intentional we are about acting towards another individual in a positive manner, just a smile, just a handshake, greeting, might make a lot of difference. So, Mr. Brandon, we're going to see you tonight as well, and so we're really excited you're here. I hear this is your second time? Second? We might have to find a place for you near the airport. Welcome here, and we're really thankful that you're here for 3 weeks. Thank you. And I'm happy to give brother as well, Mr. Samantha. Please come on. And thank you for bringing Mr. Christo to our city as well. Thank you.
Hey, my name is Amir Samandi. I'm the founder and executive director of Students of Service SOS. You'll see some of the shirts on the youth in the room. First of all, let's give it up for young people being here on a Saturday, please. We are very proud of San Antonio's young people. They are doing amazing things. Let me tell you just a brief bit about Students of Service. So we build young leaders who have a global perspective to solve local problems. And we do that through 3 pillars: learn, serve, and explore. So students learn about the community, college and career, learn about themselves, then they serve the community. So every weekend, pretty much, we are out in the community helping at the food banks, at the homeless shelters, at animal shelters, you name it. And then in the summer, they have the privilege and the opportunity to travel abroad. And so this summer, we'll be taking a group to Japan. Do I have any Japan ambassadors in the room? Raise your hand. So there's some of our youth that are going to Japan, to our sister city of Kumamoto. I see an alumni in the back too. So some of them have gone off to college and come back. So it's great to see that, to see y'all in the room. So yeah, they have the opportunity to travel. In 2022, we put together a program with sponsorship from the San Antonio Spurs to help bring a diverse group of young people of all different backgrounds, African American, Anglo, Latino, everybody comes together, learn about civil rights here in San Antonio, the struggle for civil rights, our history, how did we get here? And then they read about South Africa. They read about apartheid. They read Born a Crime, actually, which was relatable to them, and they were able to understand it and have some context for where we were going. We went to South Africa, and I had the distinct honor and privilege of meeting Christo and his wife Estelle. Very good, wonderful human beings who forged a deep friendship with not only me, but I think our entire city. And so we brought them here in 2023 to the Carver Theater. We had a wonderful program. Some of the students who traveled on that experience were able to interact on stage. And that friendship has continued, I'm proud to say. And so hopefully we can put together a group. Come talk to me if you want to go to Cape Town. Christo's told us he'll host us over there. So hopefully we can put together a group and go. But that's how I got to know Christo Brand and how we've been able to sustain a friendship over several years. And I'm honored to have you here today, Mr. Brand. Just thank you so much for all you do for humanity. I know you on a very personal level, and I know you're to be a person who wants to make the world better. So we're honored to have you here. I'd like to invite you up to come and give your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amir, invited me here. Also again today, all of people involved. But I just want to say to you, was it not for Mr. Mandela that you have never stand here today? He was the one who put pressure to me to write a book. I was not interested in that. So he managed to convince me and sent a lady to me help me with my book. And that book was making me traveling. And he said, if you travel the world, you make friends. And I made some friends all over the world. And when you make friends, you bring peace in the world. So we try to do that. We try to motivate the youth to operate in. But I grew up on a farm where I was the only white child playing with African children. My father was just a foreman. And one day I was disrespectful to the elderly African man. When my father gave me hiding, he said to me, the person can be black, but a human being like us. And we must respect each other as human beings. So I grew up with that respect. But many years later, my father landed up in a hospital. The rich farmer chased us off the farm. We moved to the city. And for the first time in a city, I don't have black friends or mixed race children to play with. I go to a new school. But when I was in grade 12, I was also called up for military service. That year was compulsory for all white militants of Africa to join the military for 2 years. And that day when I see my friend off on the station, he said to me, not really wanted to fight the black people in the townships. That year, the military operating our townships. He don't want to fight black people in borders. He wanted to become a medical doctor. But the government said the first 2 years of his life for the military. So he was sent for his training. 6 months after his training, he was sent to the borders. He was killed by so-called terrorists. Then I decided I don't want to join the military. I look for something alternative. But luckily, a gentleman visited our school. They're looking for prison guards. I was not interested in that. Till I mentioned exemption from military service. Then I think I will have a conversation with this guy. After the conversation, I said to him, I don't want to become a prison guard. I want to become an electrician.
He said that's a right opportunity to take. Join the prison service, applied to work in a prison workshops, become an electrician, to help prisoners become electricians. So I signed up and I sent my training and I was sent to Robben Island. Has any one of you visited Robben Island? A few guys. Okay, that's good. That morning when I came on that island, they told us we're going to meet the biggest criminals in the history of South Africa. They tell us these guys in this prison got life sentences. Some of them have double life sentences. We have to break the spirit of these guys. These guys are here to do hard labor. But that morning when I opened that first cell, I see an elderly prisoner, African man, stand up from the floor. He slept on 2 thin mats and 3 blankets. He stand bare feet, short pants, short sleeves on a cold cement. And I was immediately feel sorry for this old guy. And he greeted me with respect. I look at his face and look at his arms. I don't see any tattoos on him. And I see that can't be a criminal. So I go to the second cell door. I met an elderly, more elderly person. So I start reading names: Andrew Mlangeni, Walter Sisulu, Raymond Muslaba, Nelson Mandela, and all these names. I've never heard this name before in my life. I asked the sergeant, what is this criminals in for? He said to me, that's a terrorist to try to overthrow your country. That's a terrorist to kill your young boys on the borders. Immediately I feel I must hate these guys. But when I look at the age of these guys, I can't believe they can be terrorists. They're humble, treat me with respect, and very polite. Then I work in a limestone quarry where I caught these prisoners breaking the lime rock with primitive tools. That was very white for my eyes. And I see that when the prisoners load it onto the truck against the wind, they get pure white of the lime dust. When it reached my eyes, I said to myself, how can this old guy surviving working this hell condition? It was terrible how these prisoners were being treated. But Mr. Mandela said that was a place for them out of prison. That was a place where they could communicate with each other. That was a place where they could educate each other with no books. It was always with that respect. But you know, when Mandela came in prison, when one of his comrades came to me and said, comrade, I received a letter from my wife. Can you please read this letter for me? Mandela was shocked. His comrade can't read or write. Then I found out more than 70% of the prisoners can't read or write. There was no education for them in South Africa for black people. So that's where he said to his comrades, us which is educated, let us help the others with no books. Let us level the dust in the sands, write in the sands. In a limestone quarry, they put the ABC on the cave there, on the walls where they relieve each other with toilets. That's where education started on Robben Island. But they was fighting, and then they get permission to study education, but mostly correspondent colleges. When they studied that, that was very expensive. Black people didn't have money. They was poor. So Mandela always pressed his wife, Winnie Mandela, to get funding in from the outside. He'd speak to his lawyers, which he see once a year for 2 hours. Then later he started attending all church services on Robben Island. But the church service was the only way how they can meet somebody in person. And they can always greet the priest. And when they're greeting the priest, they can tell the priest, such and such a guy needs money urgent for education. So South African Council of Churches and from abroad, money came into Robben Island for education. Mandela always let the guys believe in this prison and said to them in the message, this is not a prison, this is our university. If the guards beat you, you must think it's your educators. But because in this prison, we never try to escape. If you escape and the police arrested you, you'll be tortured till death. How can you fight the struggle to death? They always pressurize each other to educate. But then there was prisoners who get double life sentences. They said, why we must educate themselves? They're anyway going to die in prison. Mandela said, even if you died in prison, you study, comrade. Because you can leave your certificates behind. Your family can say at least our grandfather, or our father, or our brother was fighting the struggle. He prepared himself for the freedom one day, which you achieved maybe today. But he left the certificates at least behind that he said what he tried to achieve while he was in prison. Didn't waste his time. So he was also, I was in then 1982, Mandela was transferred to Paulsmoor prison. And there I became in charge of the Mandela group on that roof of the maximum security prison. But you must remember, it was very difficult for me to have friends. Amir asked me earlier if I have friends. I could have not had friends. If I have friends, the police of the intelligence or security branch will visit him, ask him a lot of questions and try to find out more. Back their telephones, follow them and all these things. So I didn't have friends at all. I've got today more friends abroad than in South Africa, if I put it that way. So it was very difficult that time to have friends. But in that prison, at Paulsmoor prison, I became in charge of the Mandela group. A lot of things happened between us there. That is where Mandela was doing an LLB degree, another law degree. He failed that subject for nearly 4 years. And he came to me and he asked me for some help. And I said, Mandela, I'm not an educator. He said, Mr. Brandt, it's your home language, your home tongue, Dutch Afrikaans. So I helped him, let him write essays, I take it to school, marked it. After 2 years, Mandela passed his practical Afrikaans. Mandela also became my lawyer. I was in a motorcycle accident in 1985, where the people start suing me for the accident. I didn't know what to do. I don't have money to see a lawyer. I go to Mandela and just ask him for advice. With that as advice, he said to me, Mr. Brandt, this is short, small fry. Let me draft up your letter. Let your wife retype the letter. And that was quite the issue from that way, registered post. After a second letter, we won the court case. They pay me out for the damage of my motorcycle accident. So that was another thing. Then there was a time where I smuggled my baby. I was that time an officer. So I was higher than some of the guys who work at night shift at prison. That one night I must take Mandela urgent message. So I take my baby infant into Mandela's cell. He was so excited to see my small boy of 14 months old that he wanted to hold him, but my son didn't want to go to him. So Mandela started feeding some sweets. My son became a regular visitor in Mandela. When Mandela was released from prison, he always phoned at home. My son would always run for the phone first. And then he called me one morning to his office and he gave me a letter and he said, Brandt, this letter you gave your son. The letter was saying, congratulations on your 16th birthday. Through studies, you become the most important person of our country, one of the biggest leaders from South Africa, from Uncle Nelson. So my son was very proud to receive this letter. Then a few years later, Mandela gave my son a scholarship and he studied, and then he didn't want to use that scholarship in New York. He wanted to become a commercial diver. So Mandela sent my son for commercial diving course. So he started work on Robben Island, the extending of the harbor wall, side gates, deep in the harbor, a lot of constructions. But 2005, my son died in a car accident. Without me informed Mandela the next morning about the death of my son, he was the first one who phoned me. Till today, I didn't know where he get the message from. He phoned me and he said, Brandt, explain to me what a shock it was for him when he get this message. It reflected back to him when he was a prisoner on Robben Island. When he get a telegram that his elder son had died in a car accident. He said, Mr. Brandt, I could have never said goodbye to my son the day when he was sentenced. My son was never allowed to visit me while I was a prisoner. Now I get a telegram my son had died in a car accident. I could have not attended a funeral and how difficult it was for him. Then he said to me, Mr. Brandt, a parent must never lose a child. A child must rather lose a parent. Then he said to me, Brandt, I would love to attend your funeral, but I'm not in the country. I said, President Mandela, I really respect that. I know your heart will be with us, the family, but the funeral will be within 3 working days. That day of the funeral, Robben Island ex-political prisoners all attend, staff members attend, members from parliament, ministers were there. That day I was supported by people from different cultures. 2 weeks after the funeral, Mandela was back in the country. He wanted to see me and my wife immediately. And that is where he pressurized me to write a book. So I said to him that day, President Mandela, if I must write a book about our relationship, I'll end up in prison tomorrow for all the illegal things I done. He said, Mr. Brandt, that won't happen. So it happened, he sent a lady to me 6 years later. My book was finalized. But Mandela was very excited about my book. But then he get in hospital. My book was still at the publisher. He gets sick and he passed. When Mandela passed, 3 months later, or when he passed, I was invited to the funeral. The family wanted me at the funeral. But 3 months later, my book was launched in the UK. That evening, Zinzi Mandela picked up and she said to me, Mr. Brandt, you can't run away from me. My last promise to my dad was, he said, if he can't attend your book launch, I must represent him. So my book was very well received in the UK. Then I launched my book in Constitutional Hill, South Africa, and then in UMass, Boston, in America. So my book was very well received. I think I will stop there because I said in San Antonio, I don't have freedom of speech. You know, when Mandela walked out of prison, his first words was, they tell him on that day of the speech, he got 30 minutes. And he said to the guys, 30 minutes. I came out of prison after 27 years, and you don't want to give me freedom of speech. I will see if I can fit it in, but I'll fit it in. Thank you.
Yeah, we are privileged to have a wonderful panel. So you guys are about to enjoy a great conversation. moderated by Commissioner Tommy Calvert. Go ahead and come on up. Let's give it up for Commissioner Calvert, please. And a community leader, Colonel Reggie Williams. And of course, Mr. Christo Brand.
Thank you so much. Let me see if I can turn this thing on. There was no rehearsal on that. Let me just make heard it.
Sorry,
It's on now. There we go. Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay? I can,
too, Reggie.
perfect.
I can project, but everybody can hear me. Okay, well, thank you so much, Amir, and thank you for that powerful testimony, Christo. It's a great honor to welcome you back to Texas. You have, as you've heard, a permanent place to spread this great message of reconciliation. And I was listening to you and thinking about Nelson Mandela just simply taught us, in line with the theme of Dream Week, good neighborly living. Good neighborly living. And we're going to delve more into that as it is very relevant, the experience of South Africa to what we are now struggling with in American politics today. I want to welcome again Reggie Williams, who's given so much to this community. Time and time again, you won't let the man retire, but he is here serving us so well. To all your excellencies in the Foreign Service, thank you so much for joining us today. It is great to have all of you here. Armin, I feel I always, whenever I get to go to the World Affairs Council, and this is a moment of true pandering, I always feel like I've made it because as a young man who was involved in Model United Nations, the World Affairs Council, when I was at St. Mary's Hall, had incredible programs that I still remember, going to see people like Judy Woodruff and Bernard Shaw and others who came in the 90s when I was in high school. So thank you for once again bringing us international perspectives, because ultimately we're here to learn how to live among each other in peace. I often say people can't hear you until they know you, and they've asked me to give just a little bit of context to my background. Why are you having a county commissioner talk about this? Before I was county commissioner, I ran a global human rights organization that freed slaves and fought genocide around the world. And I helped create two of the world's newest countries, South Sudan and Burma. So back in 2002, the American Anti-Slavery Group that I headed was part of the public pressure that was brought to an apartheid-like regime in South Sudan, in the northern part of Sudan, against the people of South Sudan. And so I was very proud to work with President Bush to get the Sudan Peace Act, which brought independence to South Sudanese, as well as work on the Myanmar issue with respect to the fact that Aung San Suu Kyi was under house arrest. I traveled and documented some things, worked with Charlie Rangel in Congress, and got the Burmese Freedom and Democracy Act. And so there's a lot to learn. And I will tell you this, Christo, that when I was so part of my work was going into the war zone in South Sudan and freeing slaves. We camped out in a tent. We had a rebel army guard us. It was 120 degrees. It wasn't an easy time. And this is really true. Nelson Mandela was my personal hero, who his example of just sticking in there, the strength to be the reconciling person that he was, all of that was the model that I took to try and do international work, and a model that I try to have today. In my role today, one of the things that I have become very clear about is that as much as we don't like to admit it in San Antonio, and probably nobody's ever told you this before, San Antonio is dangerously close to an apartheid city. And what I mean by that is it's a city that's 77% minority, Hispanics being the largest cohort there. But if you really look at who's in control of the money and the politics, it's not the Hispanic community. And so when you wonder why is the largest Martin Luther King march in the nation here, it's twofold. One, my father was the organizer in 1978 who made sure, like Nelson, to move the planning meetings to every side of town so everyone felt welcome. So the planning meetings he started in 1978, he held in the white area of town in the northwest side at the Unitarian Universalist Church. He would move it to the west side to the Mexican American Unity Council. He would move it to the south side to Harlandale Civic Center and the east side of Barbara Jordan. And by bringing everybody together and saying we're all one, here you had a 8% African American population, but we grew by reaching out, just like Nelson Mandela did. And so the other half of that is I think you have a community that is very much concerned about their civil rights still. Educational inequality, poverty, the issues go on in San Antonio. So we have a lot to learn from Nelson Mandela, and none of the world's nations do this perfectly. We're blessed that we can have the 2020 of hindsight to learn from history, to learn from historical figures. And so I wanted to just open it up and say that, you know, these kinds of community calls to action, calls to education are critical because we are now faced, frankly, with a national politics that's really looking at division once again in a very profound way that we haven't really experienced since perhaps the civil rights era and the Civil War. And so I wonder on this issue of forgiveness and reconciliation, Mr. Brand, you witnessed Nelson Mandela's extraordinary capacity for reconciliation and forgiveness. And I wonder what you could tell us, being a South African, about what we need to be doing to make our politics less divided.
What I can say to you first, Mandela was not really the person which people look up today. He always said his leader was Walter Sisulu. That was his mentor. And then when he was in prison, he learned from Martin Luther King and Gandhi, tried to follow their footsteps and things like that. But what he done, he was listening to the people around him who were in trouble. And that's where he come up with the truth and reconciliation. First, his comrade said to him, it's now time to take revenge on the white people. And he stand up at that ANC conference and he said, comrades, we can't take revenge on the white people. The country still belongs to the whites. But let us take the hands of the enemy and work harder than before to build the country together. That was his wisdom, his spread. But when he became president, there was more pressure on him. That's where he sat with church leaders. He sat with tribal Xhosa chiefs and different chiefs in tribes. He sat with him and he see a lot of people. And then he come up with Bishop Tutu and the three bishops with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We advertised, he said, and he bring it up forward. He said, anybody done something wrong during apartheid for both sides, please come forward, apply for amnesty. And if you tell the truth, amnesty will be granted to you. So people have come forward, they applied for amnesty, and it was a difficult period our country gone through. But at least the families who lost their beloved ones could have made closure. With that closure, they forgive the guy who killed that person. They understand his reasons of the apartheid. But they will never forget again, and it must never happen again, Mandela said. And when there was an issue in South Africa with, say for instance, a person killed a black person, and there was supposed to be an uprising, there's never been an uprising after that. They will make sure the culprit who killed that person must be arrested. He must take to trial, he must take his court case. He will end up in prison. But he will also try to reconcile people with each other. You know, and that was Mandela's wisdom he spread out. What I will say in what he done also, he tried to bring people together in sports. You know, certain sports was only for whites in South Africa. He tried to put the sports together and mix it, that black people can attend. And he put up the apartheid jersey in 1995. And he celebrated with white people that time, with a majority white players. There was only one player of color in that team. But they celebrate and they bring black and white together. Now, 2 years ago, we've got a World Cup again. If you go in our townships of any places of Africa, you see black people walking on that day. They walk with our apartheid jersey to celebrate the Springbok. He bring people together with sports. He bring people together with music. He believes in music. You don't see a color. You just enjoy and sing together and bring people through that. There was a lot of efforts he done. to bring people together. Even on schools, the schools become all multiracial. Kids grow up together. And he said also, you educate your kids correct. Let the kids know about different tribes in South Africa. Let them visit, a white kid can visit an African guy, which may be a Xhosa, to understand his tribe, understand his way, understand his church and things, invite him to your place that he can understand your culture also. If you learn each other cultures, you have more respect for each other. And through that respect, we can build the country together. That is what happened in Afghanistan.
Answer, give him a round. Reggie, and Reggie said he's got some questions too. So but I want to ask you a question very, very quickly. Your story is one of resilience as well. You've had a lot of leadership roles where you've had to be a first and be resilient in spite of the obstacles ahead of you. And growing up in Orville, you've encountered a lot of things, but you also understood the importance of goodwill and in getting to change and fostering change. And so, can you talk a little bit about your experience, your insight, your wisdom to us on how we can collaborate across these divisions, these racial lines, these societal lines, to meaningfully take our communities forward?
Yes. I come from a little bit about myself. Okay. I come from Orville, Ohio, about 5,000 people. Not famous for anything except Smokers, Jams, and Jellies is headquartered there. And Bobby Knight, the basketball coach, is from there. His mother was my third grade teacher. Mrs. Knight was tough, okay, as you might imagine. I went to the College of Worcester. When I went there, there were 9 blacks on the entire campus, all athletes, all male. My mother was a housekeeper on that campus. Which was good in some cases, not so good in others, okay? But, so I went to the Air Force. Air Force brought me down to USAA, stayed there for 10 years, and then went to the San Antonio Area Foundation and wound up at Hallmark University. That's all you need to know about me. Now, in answer to your question about what it takes, I grew up in a time, you can tell by my silver hair, I grew up in a time where if you were black and you did anything significant, there was a chance that you were going to be the first. It was just the way it was. I got introduced to the Rotary Club in Worcester, Ohio, about 12 miles from my hometown, as the first black in the Orville swimming pool, which was sort of an interesting introduction, but it was true. It was true. In my hometown, there were, at the high school, maybe 13 blacks. 3 graduated every year. So, like I said, if you could do anything significant, you were probably going to be the first. So I was the first black football captain. I was the first student body president. Not a big deal. Anything you did significant, that's the way it was. Now, Rotary knows that I quote my mother a lot. I am a mama's boy. And she is the one that taught me to stand on your feet. Nobody's better than you and nobody's worse than you. Treat everybody as equal. When you talk to people, talk to them like this, not like this, and not like this. So I got in the service in the United States Air Force. I'm talking to generals. I don't care if you're a general or not. If your kid knocked down, we sometimes talk to our own kids that way. If you're talking to your wife, the same. So I think it's important how you deal with people and how you see yourself. No better, no worse. What I'm interested in is character. And no better person to be interested in character than Nelson Mandela. I'm interested in what character traits he had that we can use here in San Antonio and I could use personally as we move forward. And I think there are many of them. So I'm interested, Mr. Brand, in what character traits you saw in him that first made you like him, that secondly made you think that apartheid was not good and there was something better. What were those traits?
You know, when I tell you the first time, Mandela was looking up to Martin Luther King and all these people. In prison, he was always, we get library films from the provincial library. He was always trying to get films of leaders. But when I end up in prison, and I got him, I was thinking of the values my father taught me when I grew up on a farm. Respect elderly people. Started with that respect. When I see the way I was 18 years old, that when I arrived there, become 19, Mandela was 60. The way he respected me, I could have not believed that. So with that similar respect, we understand each other immediately. We come from the same area. So I treat him with the same respect. There was many times I must do things, and I try to do respectful only with a smile and maybe friendly word, that's all, because we was not allowed to communicate much with him. But when we've got a private place where we take him to the visiting center, where we're private away from other guards, there we've got conversations, you know. And that Mandela was also one of the first persons in South Africa become a lawyer. He was one of the first black lawyers in South Africa before he get to prison. But you must remember where he come from. He come from the rural areas. He was one of the children of a chief of Mveso. It's an area in the rural areas. And he always said to me, Mr. Brandt, I sit behind my father and listen to what the leaders discuss. That's how I was brought up. But my father died when he was very young. So my father's brother take over the position. So I sat with him. But when they want to push me to become the leader of that Mveso, then I run away from there. I run to Johannesburg, and then when I end up there, I end up on the mines working. I must get the income. I must eat. That's where he met Walter Sisulu, which was a father figure for him. That's where he joined the NC. And that's where you see more different things of apartheid. He never really realized that when he was a small boy, because of when areas we come from, he didn't see that apartheid. Same as me. When I land in a city and I start working on Robben Island, I see all the discrimination against apartheid, how people oppressed one another. Where we walk on a pavement, a black person must walk in the street. Where a black person not allowed to buy certain liquor and certain privileges. I see a board, blacks only. I remember one day I was in Cape Town Station, I was still a young boy, and I was with a friend me and I ran to the toilet. He said, you can't go in there, that's for blacks only. I said, what is it different with blacks? I want to see why their toilets is so special. So I walk in the toilets and I use the toilets for blacks only, you know? And that's where I experienced what was apartheid. But I don't want to join the system. I didn't want to become working in the military, killing black people in a township and things like that. That's why I use the alternative way and get out in a prison. And that's where I met this wonderful guys. And Mandela became like a father to me, a leader figure. That's why I could have asked him some special things, which he had done for me, because I know he can keep a secret. But it was difficult on Robben Island also to trust everybody, because the police and intelligence was always make sure between these prisons is people who get information from the inside to the outside. So I could have not trust everybody, but I could have trust people which was all over 15 years already in prison. So that's what I see out of Mandela, that leadership stand up. That's why the day when he was released, he said, I'm not a leader, I'm just ornament in your hand. You must guide me that I can lead the people of South Africa. He was that type of person. He was always humble, down to earth, respect. If you walk in here and see a paper laying on the floor, you will first pick it up. You will first greet the kid, and you will tell the kid how important they are here today. Always tell the kids about education. How important is education? And you always tell the kids, if you got your parents pay for your education, you must grab it with all your hands, study hard, and make your parents proud. And he always said, if you become one day on a top level there, you look down, then you think back, I've got opportunities to study, but in Africa and the world, there's so many kids who love education, but they don't have the opportunities. Mandela was always that belief in the youth, and he said the youth can bring a change in a country.
That was very powerful. Very powerful eyewitness to history. And thank you, Reggie, for co-moderating with me. I know we were going to end up doing this. This is great. No, it's a great question. And, you know, we do have youth here. You have donated your time many times to speaking to youth, and we're grateful for the SOS Youth Group here. And you really touched quite a bit on what my next question was, which was to ask you about not only the highlights of his story that can be a benefit to you, but just tell us what it was like to witness, as from your perspective as a citizen of the country, him having to take so many youth who had no education in different circumstances. Give us a little bit of that story of how difficult it must have been to get the youth moving in the right direction, and any advice for him.
You know, if I can remember, on his 80th birthday, I was invited there. That day, a sheikh from Saudi Arabia gave him 10 million, I don't know, dollars of rand. And he said to me, Mr. Brandt, I'm an old man. What am I going to do with this money? I can't leave this money behind for my kids. They must work for their money. But I'm going to use this money for orphanage. I'm going to use this money for education and help uplifted people in the country. He said, always the more you help people around you, you'll be blessed with good life. You know, in South Africa, we've got a day in July which we call the Mandela Day. That's a day when everybody in South Africa must try to do something good to someone else for 27 minutes. So people, and we want to do that every day, but on that day, we reach out, we create food or money or something like that, sponsor people for 27 minutes. And in December, we've got a Freedom Run for Mandela, which we recognize him still on the Robben Island, where people come and run, and all that money, we say, in there, go for charity, for organizations to help orphanage children. Mandela was actually close to orphanage. You know, when Mandela sat in a bed with his son died of HIV positive when he was president, the first person who contacted him on that day and fly into South Africa was from America, Mr. Bill Clinton. And he came up with an initiative to help and support Mandela with the HIV Foundation in South Africa. A lot of money was being given, and he still made sure that people get medication. So he was thinking of the people around him. He not always think for himself. He will sometimes give his last food away for somebody to make him feel well fed and be happy, so he stay hungry. So he was that type of person, always be going out, do the extra mile for people. Even when he became president, was still keeping that same attitude.
Incredible. I mean, if you think about the tone he was setting, not every foreign leader would have taken that money for his people. The way you told me that story, they could have taken it for themselves. But he set the tone for his country to give it to the need. And for young people, that integrity will have a redounding for generations. And I hope that many other electeds live up to it. For either of our panelists, Mandela's life embodied the intersection of justice and humanity and courage. How do you think his values can be applied to solving issues like poverty and systemic inequality for those of us here in San Antonio?
You know, we must reach out for people. We must make certain programs available. Try to raise funding to help and put up, like in South Africa, he was also putting up soup kitchens, we call it, where people can come there and get some food. You know, I know there's 3 ladies in South Africa which done a project like that. There were schools in a township which not attended at all by kids. They decided they call themselves Sami mummies. Sami means sandwich mothers. So they make sandwiches. In the morning, they stand before school, they stand there at the gates, Every child get a packet of sandwich when they go to school. When it's in the afternoon, when the kids left, she gave them each one a cup of soup. But if they bring the cup back, they give them sandwiches again. Then they can leave. So the kids were doing that. And Mandela said always, if a kid is hungry and his stomach is making a noise, he can't concentrate to educate himself. If you can feed a child, you can study, you can feed his brain, he can study. So that was one of the things Mandela was believed in. And he tried to motivate people all around to help and educate people and help people with food. With food, you can help also with education and things like that, and even sports. And there was a lot of people going out into the townships to train young kids with just sitting at home, of going to school, but they don't belong to any sports, to uplift them with sports and create them. And we get donations in for sport equipment to help these kids that they can feel proud of the sport they're playing. And from that, education can start also.
Reggie, you have any thoughts about Nelson?
I hooked on your word courage, because to me, you cannot fight wrong without courage. There's no way. And Nelson Mandela certainly exhibited courage in everything that he did. And that's one of the reasons I admire him so. You know, first of all, just the courage to survive in the situation that he was in. And then the courage to come out and not become a person that is vindictive. The courage to do what he knew was right for South Africa. That is what, thank you for that word, because to me, that's one of the traits that he exhibited that I love so much.
Very powerful. And I think I can pick up on that last answer that you gave and ask you both about the fact that Mandela spoke about our shared humanity. We've talked a little bit about that, but that humanity that unites us all. And in a social media world where the algorithms push on this division, and we've got a lot of conversation in politics that's so divisive, is there, any lesson that we can learn about how we can take this concept of our shared humanity and address our challenges in spite of a system that, at the governmental top is trying to divide? Any thoughts?
Mandela was a person who believed the more there's fight in politics, there's healthy politics. It's very healthy to argue. If people don't argue and stand up for themselves, then people is corrupt. That's what I believed in. But I believed in this country, if the people can stand up and tell their rights, walking forward, and showcase what is going wrong or what they don't like, show it that the world can see it. The world can put also pressure. And that's what Mandela done. When they was in a struggle, they marched, we call it toy. They marched, and with that march, they put out documents and things, and they tried to get the world involved, that the world can put pressure and sanctions. That's when Mandela was in prison. There was a lot of sanctions on South Africa. In 1984, they gave Mandela an offer for freedom, which he immediately rejected and said he'd rather die in prison than to be free and his comrades are not free. But that rejection is spread like a feldfire over the world. America was the first country to boycott us when Daimler Chrysler, Pepsi Cola was taken out of South Africa. The Netherlands boycott our vegetables. All these places boycott us. When that boycott, massive of tons of vegetables and things were dumped in the sea, was not allowed to come back in our ports. That's where the government sit down again and come up with a new legislation. Gives everybody an offer for freedom under certain conditions. When nobody accept that, except one person which was sentenced with Mandela for life. And that guy was isolated for 20 years alone. And he was a Jewish guy by the name Dennis Goldberg. And he was being released, deported back to Israel. But when Mandela was released, he was the first one to be back in South Africa. Apologized to the ANC that he made a mistake. But Mandela said, we pray and hope that you can sign an offer because you're not a South African citizen. But with your release, you could have still worked for us for the organization from the outside. So the pressure from the outside must be there too, to help your people, support your people, and go through the struggle.
I think we can start to open up to questions from the audience. And so I hope you've been marinating on any questions.
I'm gonna run the mic around.
Yeah, sure. All right. Anybody have any questions for this history?
Start right over here.
I don't know if you, Christo, if you feel qualified to answer this, but as an educator, I'm really interested in how the educational system nowadays in South Africa is handling educating and teaching young people about that period in your history that we characterize as the apartheid regime.
You know, that's the biggest problem we have in South Africa today. I was speaking at the university to students, which 95% of the students was black. And they said to me, Mandela was a sellout for the country. Look, we've qualified, we've got degrees, we've got everything, we can't find a job. Then I looked at the guy and I said, my friend, can I just explain you something to you? You know, when Mandela was a young boy in Umbeso, so he ran away from there to the city to work in the mines underground. His comrades sent him for education. He became the first black lawyer in South Africa to fight for the right of freedom which we experience today. That years there was no universities for blacks in South Africa, only one university. There were no schools for blacks, and education program for blacks was so bad that the grade 12 certificate is not worth what written on it as grade 12. Could not find a job. But today you've got the freedom. You are freedom, born free. You can go to any university, you can go to any school, you can stay in any subject. You've got opportunities today which Mandela and the elder people never have in their life. That's why Mandela said when he walked out of prison, it's now the time we must take the hands and work harder than together to build the country together. Not wait for government to provide you, but you must go and find a job yourself and help yourself. Then the guys apologized to me, but I know education is still not on standard in South Africa because there was, during apartheid, there was an education for blacks, which were very poor, education for coloreds, there was an education program for Indians, there was one for whites, which was the top of the range. So today we've got one education system, and they bring the standard down a little bit to accommodate everybody in South Africa to fit into that education program. But the program become higher every year with the new intakes getting to school. But I believe and hope that our education become better. But they still not investigating good teachers. Teachers must taught the kids. A lot of kids jump school, they're not in school. There's a lot of shortage of schools in South Africa. A lot of kids is never going to school at all, sitting at home. That's what I say, it's not good. It must be attended to, that kids can go to school. A few years ago, I done a tour with a guy. He done a day as a life as a prisoner. We put him in chains and treat him very bad on Robben Island. Then that guy donated 1 million rand for education to build some schools. He was helping. And that initiative is still there. There are still people out there in South Africa to try to help to create schools, especially private companies. But then the government want to control the place. And that's where the problems also start. Otherwise, people today go mostly to private schools. Even black kids is in private schools, if you put it that way, and so on. But the government schools is always overcrowded. And they don't only, they maybe have 50 in a class, they concentrate on the first 10 in front, they forget about the others. That is what is not very good in South Africa.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say that when you went to the college, they called Mandela a sellout? Did I miss you? Wow. Okay, just want to make sure I had to ask for sure. Okay. Another question in the back. Go ahead.
Very good. Thank you guys so much for having this debate. So my name is Michelle Lopez, and I'm running for U.S. Congress against Henry Cuellar. So we have a lot of things to discuss, but one thing I'd love to say is that I pledge when I do get elected that we definitely should have some federal legislation and Texas legislation and San Antonio ordinances to bring this Nelson Mandela good day, good deeds, the 27 minutes that you've discussed. I think we definitely need to pass some of those things. But in the light of justice, humanity, and courage that you've been mentioning, and all the human rights as far as the women's violations of their rights and immigrants, my question is, besides holding the line, what are we to do while we're fighting cartels and terrorism? So what would be your advice to maintain stability but still being a good neighbor?
We must actually interact with each other more. There must more be programs, especially like this program like sport events. maybe musical festivals and things like that. Where we can create also some money for SOS for the kids in this country, but we reach out to people that people can enjoy the thing together. And then you try to make it in smaller groups later. And then you bring up a thing like Truth and Reconciliation Commission where people can talk to each other. Why you are discriminating against a black person in this country? What is your problem? How did you grow up? Why you still hate it? Because Mandela said we're all born with love. We all learn to hate. But love is coming stronger than hate. So I believe we can all love each other again and stand up together as one nation. And he always said there's only one nation that is a human, only one race, and that's a human race. We don't see the color.
Good afternoon. Sorry, my name is Brandy. Thank you all for being here to answer these questions, and thank you for reminding us that it takes a collective effort for things to change. However, I have a question that may be a tad bit, well, let me just ask it. So, when Mr. Reggie asked the question over what is it that you saw in Mandela that kind of made you identify with the inner struggle. I often fear that we expect the oppressed person to exhibit some trait that makes us feel like they are human, we should be kind to them. But what is it that the experience of Mandela that you saw in yourself that made you realize that maybe you had been taught wrong, or maybe you had been lived through a experience that wasn't true of what people in South Africa, potentially the oppressed people of South Africa, were going through? So I guess to repeat it, what is it that you saw inside of yourself that made you able to identify with the humanity of Mandela versus what was it inside of him?
What I experienced myself in what Mandela was fighting for. He told me one day, he said, Mr. Brandt, there was elections. He said to me, Mr. Brandt, you know, this elections, we as black people also would love to vote. And he explained to me what can change in the country. We could also like to vote, to bring people together, that we can work together in this country, because blacks never have the right to vote. And he always let me believe he said, I always let him believe there's a world outside the prison bars. And through my eyes, he could have seen what was the white people feared in South Africa. And he tried to overcome the fears of the white people. That's why he tried to bring the white people closer to black people to understand each other. And that was his changed mindset when he walked out of prison, not with hatred, but with reconciliation. And that's what I see in Mandela. But when I met Mandela, I was just one of the ordinary prisoners to me. The prisoner which I was more interact with was Walter Sisulu and Ahmed Katradra. But Mandela was a lawyer. He was always a person that you can trust. When you ask him something to help you with something, he can keep it a secret for only himself. That day when I smuggled that baby for him, he never told his comrades about it. He kept it for himself. Only one that day when he was in Parliament, when he see me standing in Parliament, he security come and fetch me. And I think, why the president want to see me there in front? He put his arm around me and he explained to the people how I risked my life for him when he was a prisoner on Robben Island. Smuggled this baby for him. Then Winnie Mandela jumped up and she was so happy and excited. She never believed that she could have never shown Mandela the child. Then she found out for the first time she showed the child. And you know, when he was president, he was still the same for me, never changed. When I walk in his office and I say, good morning, President, we sit. Later I forget about President. I said, Mandela, you remember that day what we done and so on. I just talk normally as if he was still in prison. And then when we write my book, my book was called Doing Life with Mandela, my prisoner, my friend. Ahmed Kathrada, which was his co-accused in his court case, become his but the person who helped him in Parliament. And he said to me, he said to Mandela, President Mandela, this guy can't be your friend, he's too young. Said, this is my friend. And that's how I understated in that book. His name stay like that. He will always be my friend. And that was a friendship. There was many times I sit at home, I get a phone call at night. Tomorrow morning there's a 6 o'clock plane arranged. The president wants to meet up with you. Then I must fly to Johannesburg to meet up with him. Every time you see me in a group, you see me stand at the back, he will first acknowledge me. And he first explain to people who I am and what I am. He never forget his friends, you know. He was that type of person. Always remember his friends around him, what they done. They will always come up with a joke or things like that. He will always sometimes tell the people how bad I treated him when I was a prisoner on Robben Island. Always tell that. Then you talk about our friendship. He was that person, never changed his mindset from prisoner to president and retired.
Getting back to, my name is Samuel Scott, I'm a retired Foreign Service Officer, but I wanted to reflect back on your comments on education. And this is one of my most memorable moments. I was with the delegation with the United Negro College Fund. We visited South Africa. We had a chance to meet with Nelson Mandela. This was at the end of his only term as president. And the purpose of that trip, Bill Gray, former congressman, the president of the College Fund, President Mandela wanted the 13 colleges in South Africa that existed before the end of apartheid to continue to exist and to serve a purpose. And he had a vision. He said, well, he knew that after apartheid, it would be extremely difficult. We asked Congressman Gray. By the way, Congressman Gray was one of the persons who pushed the sanctions against South Africa. And he was at that time president of the College Fund to bring a number of colleges, staff, and administrators from the black colleges in the United States to assist with these colleges in South Africa so they would continue to survive after apartheid. So that was the reason for that trip. Of course, the main university he was concerned about was Fort Hare, which is where he attended.
Okay, where you studied.
That's right, where he studied. So it was, as a matter of fact, there was a U.S. ambassador at that time, was Jim Joseph, and Bill Gray, myself. I think, unfortunately, most of the people in this picture have passed away. Well, this was in 1997, I think, was the end of this journey. It was an extremely memorable experience. And one thing I remember in particular was the audience with President Mandela was fantastic, but the security was mind-boggling. And you probably know what I'm talking about. And the same people that provided the security were the ones that had him in jail. But they realized subsequently that how important he was to the survival and the success of South Africa. So this was an extremely memorable experience for me. I just wanted to relate that.
We have another question back here. If you can raise your hand real quick for those of you who want to ask questions. Perfect, thank you.
I got fast. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. I feel extremely honored to be in the room with some of you guys. I appreciate what you do and applaud your efforts. I'm barely getting started in my advocacy journey, and it is not an easy one, especially when you start questioning establishments that you're fighting for the people who don't have the courage to speak for themselves. I second Mr. Calvert's statement when he says we are probably on the cusp of the apartheid. Sorry, I'm nervous. Because I am boots on the ground. I'm a realtor here in San Antonio, and also a lender, and I see it every day when we're fighting and taking people out and showing them houses in inner city as compared to what's happening in the county. And trying to advocate and mobilize our community is extremely difficult. So what advice could you give me? And I'm also a part of NAREP San Antonio. We're at another part. We're coming, Tanya, I promise you. Our Hispanic community is rising. But what could you offer me as far as advice on how to help mobilize the community? Is it just teaming up with other local groups to get a bigger voice, to get change to occur? How do we do this? Because I can't get them to show up. It's so hard.
Well, people are motivated by their self-interest. So the first thing you have to ask is, what are your priorities? What are your top issues with what's going on in your family or your neighborhood or for your country? And you've got to begin to organize around their self-interest and what they're interested in trying to move forward. So you got to survey them. You've got to actually have a house meeting and sit down, and we can't do it by email. You have to actually have a warm body conversation and do that and find other people who have similar interests and self-interest. And so sometimes the issues we want to fight for, not necessarily what others want to fight for. The other thing is to look high level at the media environment. And the media environment in San Antonio is purposefully devoid of good political reporting and good political investigative reporting. So I have run a newsroom and I've been an investigative reporter, and there is very few big cities that have as little public affairs programming. So I'd encourage you to empower young writers and seasoned writers who may have had a long tenure at a media institution, who would like to contribute to the democracy of the press, to come together and be a resource to amplify the issues. Because when I was working in Sudan or Darfur, we would bring celebrities like George Clooney or Al Sharpton or whoever, because we knew that the issues that got the imagery would be the ones that could get the people behind it and the money behind it and the elected leaders that we needed to reach behind it. So you've got to have an outside, inside game. And, organizing is something that you have to take a very long view of. I'm a second generation activist, right? My father spent 70 years in organizing in this community, and I've taken that baton. And I applaud him for how he has stayed in the fight for decades, including helping me organize this morning at a town hall, several hundred people. Even because he's made progress, he's seen progress. So stay encouraged, keep the faith, and don't agonize, just organize.
Good afternoon. My name is Manny Trio. I'm honored to be here and to learn from one of the greatest leaders ever. Being a legacy maker means a lot to me. Passing on the staff, love that you brought that up. And my question is, how did witnessing Mandela's resilience and leadership during his imprisonment shape your own perspective on forgiveness and reconciliation?
In prison, Mandela was a lawyer when he get in prison. And in prison, when he worked in a limestone quarry, lunchtime he was chasing a cave. That is where the guards observed him from a distance. And then that cave was all political prisoners from different political organizations in that section of Mandela. And that is where Ahmed Kathrada many years later said, when he was in a museum, that was their first parliament. That was they started discussing and come up with the constitution South Africa have today. That was a form of, that was their first parliament. 93, the government said, they were shocked and surprised when Mandela and these guys walked out of prison. How prepared they was for negotiations. They never thought that. But they never thought to put the mastermind together, what will be discussed. And that was the thing I've observed. When I worked in prison, Mandela was always sitting with his books. In the later years, you can see it from 1982, he was not doing hard labor anymore. He was mostly sitting still, he was allowed to study. But he always do research. And even you will sometimes see him sitting with his Bible and do some notes. And when he get films from the provincial library, he will try to get films of leaders, which he can monitor. And he always makes some notes. And then somebody said, no, he was just a lawyer, he just made some notes. But he was also trying to get that. That's why I said he followed other leaders. And when he walked out, that was a thing of him trying to bring people together. And he always also said, like I said in your community today, if you walk on the street and see elderly lady walk over the street and she's black and you're white, don't try to help her. Support her, take her to your house, help in the house, see something dirty, pick it up. Mandela was that person, when you see a piece of paper, he pick it up. When he became president, when he walked out of his office, the first time they take him out of his office, the security was smoking and put the butts around him. He goes down and he starts picking it up. The security realized there's a problem, they mustn't smoke here anymore. When he walked in his garden at Parliament, the gardener worked there, ran away and go and hide himself. Mandela walked back to call his security. He said, don't fix that man for me. That guy was very worried what the president will see, what is wrong. The president said, you are the most important person here. You make this beautiful garden for me. I want to thank you for what you're doing for me. And every time I come here, I want to greet you because you are responsible for this place. I'm very proud what you're doing. And what is your wife's name? And the kids, and start sending them my greetings. What like that. When you walk in Parliament, the service officers and the cleaners vanishing to the offices. He said the police in front. He said that guys must stay in the passage. I want to greet everybody in this passage because they work for me in Parliament. He was that the person acknowledged people. And when he was in prison, he will always ask the guards. I remember one day when I take him to a visit, I put him my leg irons, I walk him to the visiting center. He looked back to me. He asked me, Mr. Brandt, where are you come from? I said, I come from a farm. I grew up on a farm. He said, that is good news, Mr. Brandt. You can help me with my personal garden. In a prison, it's a small garden. We plant some chilies, tomatoes, onions, and things like that. Then he asked me again, Mr. Brandt, is your parents still alive? I said, yes. He said, send them my greetings. That was something strange to me. A prisoner tell me to send greetings to my parents. I didn't answer him on that. But when I locked him in a cell, he asked me, Mr. Brandt, are you studying? I said, no. He said, you must make use of the time to study. Studies is the future of your country. Through studies, you can become the head of the prison and you can understand us prisoners better. Always come up with something. He always try to convince the guards also to educate, because he believed through education they can change their mindsets toward them. He tell his comrades around him, you don't fight with the guards. These guards is just here to look after us, or release us one day. But we must fight with the police who arrested us. But these guys, we must try to convince them that they can study with us and things like that. And really try to make it easy on the guards.
We have just a couple more here.
I'm going to ask a quick question real quick while it's on my mind at Christo, and we'll get right back to it. In 1968, when Dr. King died, I think Time magazine had a poll that made Dr. King one of the most hated men in America. And of course, when you met President Mandela, he was characterized as a terrorist and all the things that they told you. And I wonder if you ever were able to bring him a magazine or a newspaper article which was vilifying him, and what his reaction to it, how did he deal with that kind of media manipulation, if you ever had a chance like that?
You know, I've taken a lot of things out of prison after 1982 and things like that. But you know, that years in prison, I remember there was an uprising in 1976 in South Africa. The people which was arrested was sentenced in 1978. Mandela said it's the first time they heard about the uprising in South Africa, a few years later. The time when Mr. Dr. King passed away was not that he heard it immediately. It was maybe with the next income of prisoners getting into prison, and a message was smuggled to him and get the information like that. Because information was very tight to get inside prison. So that was one of the reasons, you know. But he was the one who was really following the footsteps of Martin Luther King. I remember the film Gandhi. He showed a few times to him. Because he said, every time he see this film, he sees something different in the film. The first time when he see it was interested, he made some notes and things. When he see the second time things, he come to see the spirit of Gandhi out of this film. So that is making him also change his mindset. When he alone in his cell, he was locked up 23 hours alone on the time. Then he think about that. And he always made some notes and he write down things which he can recall. And like his comrade Walter Sisulu, they was always in some discussions about politics, about these things. And they was helping each other going through that way.
All right, back to the question.
It's such a treat to have your eyewitness, telling us about what Mr. Mandela was like in person and your friendship with him. And undoubtedly, he was such a great man and did so much to end structural apartheid and the law of apartheid in South Africa. But I wonder if you could fast forward and give us your opinion on the country today. My feeling is that the leaders that have followed him are not of the same caliber, and that the country itself is not really on good footing. Young people, both white and educated Black, the fact that we still make that distinction in that country are leaving to find opportunities elsewhere. And I just wondered, as a South African yourself who still lives there, and full disclosure, my mother is 7th generation Afrikaans, so I know the country and I know the people, but many people, I wonder what you think is going to happen fast forward in the coming years without leaders like Nelson Mandela.
You must remember Mandela laid a foundation for the new South Africa. He tried to change the South Africa to the better for everybody, the schools, institutions, everything. But when we visited a school one day, there was kids playing. And he said to me, Mr. Brandt, look, there Black and white kids playing together. I said to President Mandela, when you become in power, the schools is multiracial, open for all colors today. He was just testing me. We walked on, then he said very good, he was very happy with that. Then he walked on and he looked He stopped again. He said, Brand, look there, the black kid has just bite the apple. He shared it with a white kid. He was testing me. And I look at him, I say, President Mandela, you see that kids, they're so small, they don't see a color, they just enjoy life. Then he said to me, Mr. Brand, you're right. That's a rainbow nation I want to see develop in my country. But remember, we tried to change Robert Island into our university. We take over a government. We never run a government before. Somewhere in the line, my comrades going to fail. And they were failing big time. And he said, with corruption and all the things in the country. But he said, we must educate this youth, this rainbow nation. They will be our future leaders of our country. I believe for the last election, we have seen some changes already in our politics in South Africa. The rainbow nation stands up. And that is what I can believe. Things was going very bad now. You must remember when Mandela came out of prison, the ANC won the elections. But no, the ANC was not that strong to keep it for another 30 years or something like that. So he would try his best to get people involved to join the ANC. So there's different tribes in South Africa. We've got the biggest tribe is the Zulu tribe. Mandela was from the Xhosa tribe. So he tried to get the Zulu tribal people over to the ANC. With that, he made Jacob Zuma the deputy president, the president. With that, Jacob Zuma could have get in a lot of Zulus from the IFP, join the ANC. And then Zuma made them deputy ministers and CEOs and all these things. If one Zulu made a mistake with corruption, the others protecting him. And then when the ANC found that out, it was already too late with all the corruption in South Africa. So they kicked Zuma out. And then Cyril Ramaphosa came into power. He didn't have the power alone to run the country because all the ministers and people around him was from the Zulu tribe and they corrupt. So he opened the corruption, broadcast it to the world, that people can see this institution is corrupt. Try to get the guy out to get a new person in. So he brings some changes to stabilize South Africa. But with the last election, I believe our country will grow again. And they always said, Mr. Brandt, that the world will be going down. It will come up to a peak and then will go down again. And that is how the ripple effect is running in the world. And they said in all the politics will be a ripple effect. So I believe in South Africa, we're slowly getting back into track to moving up to get things better in South Africa.
All right, we're going to have one more question. Before we get to that, you've seen someone traveling around with taking pictures. Hamkau Jin and his wife are volunteering to attend our events each time and take pictures. He works at USAA and he just does this for fun. So thank you, Mr.
It's a pleasure to be here in front of you. And if it weren't for SOS, the organization that I'm in, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm very grateful for that. The question that I want to give you today, is there anything that we can do? Because like this question is based off your answer of education in South Africa. Is there anything that we can do to help it? Is there anything we can do to get a cause to help achieve better education for the children over there?
In South Africa.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, when Mandela inherited so many money from the day he came out of prison. People give him millions from all over. But he made sure the millions was not reached the grandchildren of his grandchildren. He put it in organizations like this orphanage school for HIV, orphanage school for kids. He still has a Nelson Mandela Foundation to send disadvantaged kids from the rural areas on education to send them to universities and places like that. But I believe there's still a lot to be done in South Africa with education for the normal people, to put it that way. And that is where a lot of programs is coming up in South Africa. With the new Minister of Education which come into power now, I think she will be busy moving the things because last year they said they want to get rid of, I don't know how many thousands of teachers. Then this year when they opened it, they found out they've got a shortage of these thousands of teachers. So they were busy discussing it now recently, and I hope they can solve that problem. But the thing is, with education in South Africa, we need more schools. The schools is too overcrowded, and that is our biggest problem in South Africa.
Thank you so much. Before we close, do you all have any parting words? Commissioner Calvert?
Well, I just want to say thank you for your time and your insights today. I have learned quadruple what I learned last year listening to you, and I thank the World Affairs Council for allowing us to share this time together. Thank you, Reggie, for your life experience and contributions, and the only other thing I would say is just keep challenging to make our country better. It's going to require all of us to get involved. So thank you, and the world. So, look, I will say this. I was a kid born off of Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I never dreamed that I would help in global politics in Sudan and Burma. That was not on my plan. And so I hope that these young people today will understand that no matter where you come from, you can make a global impact. So thank you.
Nelson Mandela said one thing that rang true and goes along with your question is, I never lose, I win or I learn. And it rings true, so much truth to what you said, where we are today. They're going to stick around to answer any questions, take pictures. Please take advantage of that. I want to thank Alamo Colleges. I want to thank Amir and SOS. Thank you for making this happen. They have a table there with Mr. Brand's book, as well as other information. We also have our next event. It's also a Dream Week event, is next week if you want to attend that. We're going to have the CEO, the outgoing CEO of USAA, Wayne Peacock, and former Speaker Stroud. So if you want to learn about that program, let me know. Thank you, Commissioner Calvert, for being such a great advocate for us and a community leader. Reggie Williams, I can't say enough thank you. And if you don't know Reggie, if you go by the Tobin Center, I was telling someone this earlier, between the Tobin Center and the Tobin Garage, he's on the huge mural of some of the local African-American leaders. So his face is all the way up there. So be sure to check that out. And of course, Mr. Brand, thank you so much for being here. Estelle, thank you for making time to kind of divert the plane a little bit before you go back. We appreciate all of your support. If you're interested in taking part in programs like this is what we do. We inform and educate the community about what's happening around the world. Sometimes it's intense stuff, and sometimes it's really amazing, inspirational programs like this one. So thank you all for being here. Please stay around, finish off the food, and we'll see you next time. How you doing? Yeah. So yeah. All good.